The French government will suspend a controversial increase in the cost of fuel in the wake of nationwide protests. The U-turn comes after Paris witnessed 3 weeks of the worst riots in half a century.
The Gilets jaunes, or the Yellow Vest movement, is a movement without leaders. While they have elected some spokespeople, so far they're yet to comment on those announcements by the Prime Minister. But we do know that before that announcement took place, they had already said that they would be looking to push for more reductions in taxes rather than just fuel. The Prime Minister Edouard Philippe announced today that there would be a moratorium on hikes on a fuel tax that was due to be implemented in January of 2019. So in a month's time, and that suspension will take place for 6 months. Now, he also went on to announce some other freezes in tax hikes, including increases on utility bills. So that's the cost of electricity and gas bills for people across the country. Let's take a listen to what else the French Prime Minister had to say.
I'll suspend this fiscal measure for 6 months and will not reintroduce it until it's been discussed with all sides. No tax is worth putting the nation's unity in danger.
Well, the French Prime Minister had also said during that press conference that you'd have to be deaf not to hear the wrath of the French people. And that's something that the government has been accused of, as these protests have been engulfing France over the last 2 weeks, now going into the third week. They've been violent, particularly here in Paris, but there has been violence in some of the other margins of protests that have been taking place across the country. And hundreds of thousands of people have been taking part. Let's take a look now at some of the protests over the last 2 and a bit weeks. Well, those protests may have started about the hikes in fuel, which have increased by more than 20% for some fuels over the last year, but they've increased now to also talk about the high cost of living here in France. But those protests and the chaos that we've seen, particularly on the streets of Paris, have had an even bigger cost to the economy in France. And that's why the government is trying to make do with this damage control exercise today, as announced by the Prime Minister. Will it be enough? We're not sure, and so far it looks like a fourth weekend of protests is still set to go ahead.
Charlotte Dubinsky reporting there. Well, the so-called Yellow Vest riots have incurred large financial losses. In some areas, shop profits, for instance, are down 50%. Protesters' road blockades too have cost transport companies nationwide an estimated €400 million, and €4 million worth of damage was done to Paris on Saturday alone as demonstrators ran riots, smashing property across the capital.